Hi, I'm Chris Adams, and today I'm going to talk about how to set up the Pioneer DEH-80PRS with a three-way network and time delay. So this is at this point in 2026, it's a pretty old head unit, but it can do some very cool things that are hard to find in any head unit, which is time align, 3 audio bands, and have a ton of control. It's really amazing what you can do with this unit. So it's there's better DAC's digital analog converters available today, but the time alignment is unusual. So you can, and in this video I'm going to go over how to do the time alignment. So this has a time alignment of 6 channels. So 2 tweeter channels, 2 mid-range channels, and 2 subwoofer channels, or yeah, that's where the crossovers go. You get a 3-way crossover built in, so you don't need hardware crossovers. You have a 15-band stereographic EQ per channel, independent left and right channels, and it's pretty inexpensive, especially now that it's been out of production for a while. I think I paid $250 for it. You can probably find it used for a fraction of that. And with it, you know, a good source like Apple Music or a CD. I mean, the DACs are probably CD level. Will sound really good. MP3s will sound really not so great. Hopefully, you're beyond that at this point. You want to study the manual. The manual is very technical and it's very kind of theoretical. But in my experience with inside a car stereo, with glass and all the stuff going all over the place, sometimes something that sounds better to your ear is not really what you're supposed to do, or at least that's what it was for me. I've had this unit in my car for about 10 years, and I've been fiddling with it the whole time, and this is my personal experience with how to do it. You can split everything up. Everything can be independently done, left and right channel, except for the EQ. I really don't recommend it. I've experimented with it, but it's a lot conceptually easier to keep it the same. There's an automatic alignment tool that you can use as a baseline. It also comes with default settings. It comes with a microphone. I never really liked that, but this is how to set it up kind of by hand, or by ear. For the network settings, you need to be in stereo only. It only works in stereo. So you'll have your tweeters, mids, and bass, high, mid, and sub. And you want to start with other special features, loudness, and gain matching and other stuff. You want that off. So this is the back of the unit. There's left and right. Those are inputs over there, and the USBs are inputs. Then there's like a breakout box to attach to your rest of your system, so you can use your steering wheel. And then the interesting stuff is over here, where you have different outputs. So that by default, this system has rear, front, and subwoofer. You'll see them labeled there. There's a switch on the bottom of the unit that when you install it, you flick it, and then that side over here becomes your network output. And then you can feed a 6-channel amp. I'll go over a little bit what I have. When you switch to this mode, the head unit becomes a crossover, and each speaker goes to its own amp channel. So if you commit to this, you really just need this and a 6-channel amp, and it will be good. And cross the fingers. I always had hardware crossovers also for reasons that are beyond the scope. I was a little bit nervous that it would send like a low frequency signal to my tweeters and blow them up. It never has. So for the time alignment, it's a relative delay, so that, and the delays are very small, but it's the difference between your ears, and that's what you're setting up. So the values are given in inches or centimeters, but you're actually adjusting milliseconds. So a smaller value in measurement in inches or centimeters is a longer time delay. So you think of it that way, like if you move, let me see, if you make a larger value, it's going to move the sound in front, and smaller values are going to move the sound back. I'll explain more later. I have some video inside the car later Just for reference, sound travels about 1 millisecond a foot, 0.8 feet. So that's why when someone's playing like marching, when someone's playing a snare drum across a football field, it's very delayed. This is why. And when you get inside a car, you're adjusting by very small amounts, probably under a millisecond, or let me see how far I can go. Sorry. You adjust by centimeters. So you can adjust like 10 milliseconds, but you're adjusting much smaller amounts anyway. But anyway, it's like less than a blink of an eye. You'll see. But by adjusting with the crossovers and the time delay, so the crossovers, you're affecting the phase, and the time delay, you're affecting the phase as it reaches your ear. So if you set up well, it sounds really sublime. The stereo field, and part of it is your imagination, so you're tricking yourself the whole time also. But when you set your crossovers and time delay correct, the sound really tends to rise up at your windshield, and it sounds amazing when you do it. And if you do it badly, it sounds awful. So always go back and compare against what you're feeling, what you're experimenting with. So you experiment with the default. It's a very deep system, and as Spider-Man says, with great power comes great responsibility, and don't be afraid to start over. So you start with your baseline, start with nothing on. You start with no time delay, and make sure that whatever you do sounds better than that. When the installer that I had, I regret using him, but he installed the rest of the system, and he was very dead set against time delay. It was not a thing back in 2015, and he poo-pooed the idea of time delay. I'm a fan, but there are detractors. Small adjustments can make a big difference. Extreme settings are usually not a good idea. You're tricking your brain so that, today I was listening and just making like very small adjustments to lift my perception of an instrument on my driver's side. So that's a fun hobby. What sounded amazing yesterday can sound off today. You have ear fatigue, weather, humidity. You just confused yourself yesterday. Or if you're like me, I listen to a lot of different music, so I might listen to experimental like Ornette Coleman jazz, and then I'll listen to Meshuggah, and then I'll listen to Bass Nectar, and I'll just listen to one after the other, and the system will sound like really different for each one. So if I go down the rabbit hole of making it sound really good for Ornette Coleman, it probably sound like crap for Bass Nectar. So that's, your mileage may vary. If you always listen to the same kind of music, you can probably get it good. And you also want to make sure, out of the scope of this, your installation is correct. Make sure your speaker polarity is correct. You want to fix all your rattles, get your sound deadening together, and it should sound, your system should sound pretty good with everything flat before you start messing around with this thing. For my system, I have this head unit that we've been talking about. I bought a Focal 3-way. In hindsight, I should have gotten a 2-way. So the Focal 3-way is a 6.5 inch woofer, a 3-inch mid-range, and then a 1-inch tweeter. The tweeter sounds amazing. The 3-inch mid-range also sounds amazing. This system won't split it quite that way, and that's why I still have crossovers in there. The 6.5 inch speakers both failed over time. So I've replaced them with Eminence speakers because they were cheap and they're available. For my amplifier, I have a Mats. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but it's 2 M's and Mats. They're based out of Florida. Hi-Fi 6150D. Sounds amazing. The amp sounds amazing, and I don't have much to compare it against. It's the amp I've had for a long time. I did, one time I did something wrong, and I let the magic smoke out. I sent it back to them. They fixed it for not that much. It's not an inexpensive amp. I think it was around $1,200, I think, at this point. But it will go, I mean, I'm not really a volume chaser, but it will go so loud that it's hard to think. So just by itself, just with that, and it sounds really good the whole time. I've gone through a series of subwoofers. I have a pair of Kicker, the square subs. They're 12-inch squares, and they're in a sealed box with passive radiators. I'm a big believer in passive radiators. There's beyond the scope of this, but they can, with a small container, if it's sealed instead of ported, you can get like another octave of range down. So I also went bananas with my sound deadening. I took the whole interior out. I use spray deadening. I kind of recommend it. I ruin cars. So my car, I've had it, same car. It's 2009 Honda Accord, nothing special, and is destroyed. So don't do what I do. But this is how to set up the head unit. Not so much about what to do. So tools you want to do this: measuring tape, a pencil and paper. So you want to write down everything you do, because it's not really much of a memory. So you can take screenshots with your cell phone. You want to have high quality mono music that you're familiar with. So in my case, I bought Beatles mono set. So they have stereo mix, which you don't want, which like guitars on one side, drums on the other side. You don't. You do the mono mix, which is what the Beatles wanted. The Beatles actually preferred the mono mix, for a long story. You want to have a tone generator app. I found one, Tone Generator Pro, which does sweeps, which is very useful. So you can control the sweep, and you can have white noise. You can have bandpass white noise. If you know what those words mean, that's great. If you don't, it's a good opportunity to learn about it. But basically, it lets you say, okay, if my crossover is split at 2100 hertz, I want to have white noise around 2100 hertz, so I can really narrow in. And you're going to train your ear a lot for what the various frequencies are. So in addition to the tone generator mono music, where you're really focused on checking your center with this mono music, that you know that everything is supposed to be exactly in the middle. So when you're doing your time alignment and you're measuring things and you're measuring your EQ and you're moving the sound around the sound, you know that mono is your goal, and wherever you want your mono position to be is you use your reference music. I also recommend well-recorded full-range music. Any Steely Dan record, pretty much, Asia or Katy Lied or Stevie Wonder, Songs in the Key of Life, sounds beautiful, sounds amazing. If you like orchestra music, do that. I recommend having bass music, Bass Nectar or Spangle, or what are some of the other ones? Juice WRLD, whatever you're into like that can really hit the bass hard. That's something that I found from, say, if I'm listening to, say, James Brown, and I want to have a bass, those recordings from the 60s and 70s don't have a lot of bass, so you want to turn up your bass, either EQ or your subwoofer, and then if you flip over and do like modern country or pop or anything recorded in the last 15 years, the bass will blow you out of the car, so you have to be able to turn it back down. Anyway, you want to be able to listen to a variety of sources as you make your adjustments. And if you listen to the variety of music, use mostly what you listen to. But like, for example, rap is like bass and treble and not much in the middle. Or rock, like AC/DC, is kind of the opposite. So listen to a lot of different stuff. So I use the app called, on the iPhone, Tone Generator Pro. Decibel meter is useful just so you don't hurt yourself. Measuring the decibel meter, I haven't found to be terribly useful inside a car, other than just making sure it's not too loud. And also be careful when you're listening to music in your car, whether you do this or not. You get ear fatigue. It's like, oh, this song's great, I crank it. Oh, this song's also great, crank it more. And then if you get out of your car or get out and get back in, it's like, holy crap, it's so loud. So just watch your volume as you go. For the tactics of doing this, we're going to use the head unit. It has the ability to mute different levels of the crossover and flip the phase back and forth of different channels, and we're going to do that to make adjustments to the sound. I'm not going to have sound playing because on the YouTube through an iPhone and all that stuff, it's not going to work. But if you have one of these head units, and if you didn't, you probably wouldn't be watching this, or if you're considering buying one, this is how I go about adjusting it. And adjusting it takes quite a bit of time. Use the equalizer last, and use it first as a corrective Corrective means to fix problems. When something is too much, you want to make less of it. And then you want to season to taste afterwards, like last. The very last thing you want to do is like boost bass and treble to what your ears prefer, and everything up until that point is trying to adjust it to what you. This in here. So you want to measure your speaker distance first as a starting point, and write it down in your notebook. And you want to set your. It's a good idea. I kept mine in the car just because I didn't have to keep measuring 6 months later. So you want to set your start values kind of in the middle of the range. So once you figure out, okay, my passenger side woofer is 40 inches and my driver's side woofer is 18 inches. So you just write that down, and then that's your relative distance from your ears. And you want to kind of do this with your ear a little bit. Anyway, so that's how you do it, and then you set the start values in the middle of the range. And the first thing you want to do is take your mid-range speakers and adjust the mono music signal to be in the center. So you're going to take a mono music source, you're going to mute the subs, mute the highs, and I'm going to show you how to do this in the video on the device. And then you're going to pick where you want the center to be, and then you're going to want to adjust just one side to move the perception of the sound to where you want to hear it. So this is how to do that. Okay, I'm parked, and that kind of loud sound is the fan on the amplifier, so it'll probably quiet down, hopefully. So what you want to do first is you want to measure your speaker distances. So that's a pair, tweeter and high mid-range. So like I said, I have a full cal 3-piece system with a mid-range. I don't really recommend it. You don't need it. This is really designed for tweeter and woofer. So I use that is a woofer with a passive radiator. That's an Eminence and passive radiator. The radiator helps it extend the range down on a sealed thing. That is a failed fiberglass. Pay no attention to that. So anyway, we're going to talk about the time alignment and how to do the time alignment. So what we do here is we're going to go to press the button to get into audio mode. Audio mode. Time alignment. So time alignment 1 is the initial setting, or what are our choices here? I don't want to mess this up. Custom and the auto. So I'll go back to initial. I'm going to go back out here, this button. Then I'm going to go to time alignment area 2. Is there a 3? No. So time alignment 2 is where we see the alignment. So we have the highs, mids, and lows. And we see mid left. I have measurement in centimeters. So mid left. So this is how you change the dimension. So like that. And this is how you change what you're working on. So these are all relative to the center. So that's 130 centimeters for mid right, 95 centimeters for mid left. High right is 125 centimeters. High left is 80 centimeters. So the mid, it's a little bit counterintuitive because the mid, by making the mid a little bit further away, they're both about the same distance. By making it further away, it actually comes earlier. So the distance, like I said before, the distance, the larger the distance, the shorter the delay. And the shorter the distance, the longer the delay. So the lows are going to be the most delayed, but they're back behind me in the trunk. So for now, we're going to focus on getting your mid, left and right aligned. So my mid is here and my tweeter is here. So what I try to do is I pick a mono music source, like I use the Beatles in mono. So I know it's mono, and I try to get the center to be, for my personal preference, like right about here. So like I have almost a good seat. I know some people put the center like right on their steering wheel. I like to put it about here. So that makes me feel as though the whole windshield is my soundstage. And when you mess with this stuff enough, you can really get that perception. So visually, my tweeter is down on the floor, but it's furthest away from me, and it makes it so that they're close to equally distant to my ears. So I don't need to electronically adjust them that much. Like with everything I say, that your mileage may vary. So what we want to do is, in order to set up the mid-range, we want to go back and we want to go to the crossover area. So network 3, 2, 1, and there's 3 areas here. So the mid-low pass, so the mid-high pass, and it shows you flashing this part. So high pass, you think of like everything above this amount you hear, you passing the high frequency. And then the LPF is low pass filter, so mute. So I'm going to push the button to mute the low, and I'm also going to mute the high. So that means only the mid-range speakers are going to play. And what I'm going to do, I won't do it because you can't hear it on the phone anyway, but you want to play your music source, and you start with a general idea of how far away they are, and you want to adjust. Just pick one side, and you'll adjust where you hear it. And you might have to listen carefully. You should do it on music, because tones are a little bit, they kind of a single focus tone bounces around a lot. And because you're in a car and you have glass and you have rubber and you have people and you have all this stuff, the numbers are not going to come out like they would in a textbook. So anyway, you want to adjust left and right. You want to go back out. So you want to come back out here into time alignment 2 and pick one side. Keep your left still, and you want to go to the right. And you're just going to measure the right and say, okay, when I go to 133, does that move it? With a longer distance, it should be a shorter delay. So it's perceptually probably going to move a little bit this way, but you use your ears. So you're going to move it left and right. And as always, do everything parked with plenty of time. And so that's how you set this. And then when you're satisfied, write down your values. You're going to have 6 values here. You write them down, and that's how you time align in the center frequency. Okay. So next, we're going to take the tweeter, the high frequency, and we're going to time align that against the mid. So again, we stick with the mono music source, keep the sub muted, and we're going to shift the balance all the way to one side. We're going to overlap the crossover, because we're not really worried that much about the sound cancellation, but we want to make sure that in this case there's a lot of sound cancellation, and we were going to flip the phase. So if you're not that familiar with phase cancellations, if you have like a audio editor like Apple Logic or something like that, and it's in digital, and you flip the phase of a signal, you'll completely cancel it out. In a perfect digital phase, you'll completely cancel it out. In car audio, you never totally cancel it out, but a lot of times it's easier to listen for something that sounds quiet and crappy instead of better. So when you overlap the phase, you overlap the crossover point, flip the phase, and then you're listening for when that overlapped tone is the quietest. And then you're going to adjust the high time delay to move it back and forth to hear that. So this is how that works. So the second part, now that you've got that done, we want to go to one side, and then we want to align the tweeter to the distance to the mid-range. And so to do that, we're going to use the balance. So I'm going to go over here. Whoops. Going to go back up here. Going to go to the balance. I'm going to go all the way to the right hand side. It starts at 0, so the middle is 0. I already done this once. So the middle is 0, and that's where you want to keep it. When you're done with this process, you want your balance to be here, and you want everything to be done with the time alignment. So we're going to push over to the right side, so we're only going to hear the right. You can also mute the left and right, but it's just a lot more button pushing. So it's easier to run the balance. You go here, and I'm going to turn on, in the network 1, I'm going to go to my high speakers and turn them on. And the next thing I'm going to do is, I forget which one it's on here. Yeah. So the highs, now they're playing. I'm going to go back here, and I want to overlap the frequencies. And so I'm going to, so now the phase right now is a normal phase or reverse phase. So you want everything to be a normal phase when you're done, and hopefully your electric is normal. If that's, you want to check your polarity and make sure it's correct. But for this purpose, I'm going to put it in reverse phase so we get cancellation. And I'm also going to turn the slope is going to be low because I want to maximize the amount of cancellation that I'm getting. So be careful not to play anything loud, especially if you have tweeters, because this is 1K. If you play too much of a bass, you might, at too high a volume, you rip your tweeters. So you don't want to, it's not necessary to play loud to do this. So I'm making a lot of overlap between that, and then I'm going to go back to my mid-range. Whoops. Yeah, so I'm turning it down, turning so this, it takes a while to get used to this menu. In the second menu of network is where you adjust the crossover point. So this is a crossover frequency. So I'm turning it down, I'm turning it up. So a working volume is going to be probably above around 2K kilohertz. But for now, we want to maximize the overlap, as I said. So we're going to go back. So high is down and it's phase reversed. I'm going to go back to network 1, push it. I'm going to go into my mid. So I selected the mid. I'm going to go back up one menu, back over to 2, press 2, and now my mid is low pass filter. I want to put up so there's some crossover. 4K, I mean, it's, make it go high, but 4 or 5K, so you're going to hear human voice level type of sound range. And then what you're going to do is you're going to go back to time alignment. So now we're ready for the time alignment. Now we're going to go to the time alignment, menu 2. Now this is our time alignment page. So we've got our mid set up. We've got our high right to be about correct. Like we started with a measuring tape basically to set that distance. So now we're going to play our same mono source, the same, you pick something that you like so you can listen to it over and over again. And we're going to adjust this until two things happen. You can close your eyes and adjust the position. It's going to be all the way on your right hand side, and you're going to hear when you have the time align, it's going to sound very thin and very bad. The frequencies are, because you reverse the phase, the frequencies are going to miss. So as you're adjusting this and you're listening carefully, and you're going to go kind of through the point, right? So you start here, you're going to start with a lower value and slowly go up to a higher value. And at some point you're going to reach the point where you say, okay, that sounds like the thinnest, the worst. And so when it's the thinnest, you're done. And then you go back to set everything the right way. So what do I have here? I forget where I started, 121. Anyway, I'll fix that later. So we want to go back out, and we want to set our network 3. We want to get our phase, we're going to go back to our high. So go here, go to network 1, select the high pass filter. Then I'm going to go up a menu, over, click again. Now my slope is, I want to put my slope back to probably, 24 is as high as we can go here,
with the bass, we can go, I think, one more to 36. So there's different, you can read about it, and I don't know enough to really describe it, but as the slope changes, different things happen at the intersection point of the crossover. So at 12 dB, it cuts, and at other ones, it's going to boost. So that's kind of beyond my skill level here, but you can change the slope. A stronger slope means you're going to have a higher differentiation between the two, which is probably what you want. And adjusting the crossovers for later, but one thing we can do is make sure that the phase goes back to normal. So normal phase, and now when we listen to it, when you play the material, it should sound strong. It should sound strong, and it should come from the right side. So then you can repeat the same thing for the left side, doing the same alignment for the left. And that's that.
Okay, so you repeat the same process on the other side. You silence, flip the crossover, do all that same stuff, and you're adjusting the high time delay. And then so next you're back to the center, but now in addition to your mid, so your mid you got it perfect, and so that you're worrying about your high signal now, and so you're going to try to adjust for smear so that by ear you set them to be, they should be the same, right? Ideally they're the correct, they're both the correct distance, so that ideally when you bring the balance back in the center, you have a very strong center image, and you check. But here is where you can make small adjustments here, and what you'll find, or what I found, is that when I'm making small adjustments, I usually pick one side or the other and either add to move the sound. There's going to be two types of movement of the sound. It's going to appear to move left and right, and it's also going to appear to move up and down, like with your in the sound stage, creating the sound stage. So you want to correct it into the center and then aesthetically move it up and down. So it's moving up and down because of phase cancellation, and you can do this again with a crossover. The crossover is better for this, but the time alignment also will do it. So sometimes, and a lot, so again, like sometimes you're just kind of fooling yourself, but it's like, hey, my left side sounds low, so I'm going to adjust I'm going to fiddle with the delay until it feels like up again, so I hear it again in my windshield. And that's where having dependable high quality stuff, because if you're not familiar with the recording, you're guessing, and I still mess around with it anyway, but that's where a good recording in stereo will help you fix that. So now you're going to compare and adjust your center again. Here, let's listen.
Okay, so now you've adjusted you first adjust the mid-range to be in the middle, then you adjust your right and left to be at aligned with each other, like in phase with each other. So by flipping the phase and making it sound bad, you're putting phase back and adjusting the time distance. So you're sending the tweeter back and forth until it aligns with that. So now you should be able to go back to your balance and make sure that everything's in normal phase, and go back to the center, play your material, play your mono material, and it should sound here. So you can adjust again, sticking only with the time delay, of the same way we set up the mids. You can adjust the highs or the mids, really, for that matter, and just tweak it. But you want to see, when you get it going pretty well, you should have a strong center image on mono. Make very sure that it's mono material. Like I say, Beatles or old jazz music, something that you're absolutely sure is in mono. And then, or you can if you know what you're doing, you can set up your source to just clip everything to mono, but not everything collapses right to mono. The old recordings were designed to be in mono. So anyway, you'll hear a very strong image. You should hear a strong image where your goal is. Like I said, my preference is right here. I perceive the middle, my stereo middle, to be here, and you can see it's really, 8 inches off center, but from my brain, it is kind of the center. So then you have that, and you're going to just make small adjustments to center the image as strong as you can right here.
So next is time aligning the subwoofer. So after I made this recording, I went and I increased the distance a lot to throw the subwoofer back in front, and a lot of it's taste. It's your taste and what you feel like on that particular day. I have two subwoofers wired in stereo, and so I can control them in stereo. You can always set them exactly the same so it will behave as a mono. It's against almost everybody's advice to have two subwoofers, but I like it. I have liked it. I do like it. It gives you a lot more options with what you can do. So for stereo, you align it to the mids in a similar way. The amount of time will probably be different between left and right. This is you'll get better results for orchestra jazz, and you're introducing phase problems. When I'm setting up in stereo for subwoofers, I tend to have a lot of crossover and use it to correct, like you saw earlier, my installation problems. Like I had like buzzes and rattles, so I had to make my crossover point for my mid-range very high because my doors basically fell apart, just like whatever, wasn't pretty. So instead of being able to consistently go, at a low crossover point for my mid-range at 100 hertz or 80 hertz, I really had to keep them like 160 hertz, which is almost an octave higher. So my subwoofer also had to come up an octave higher, and by addressing them in stereo and overlapping them in the same way as the tweeter. This is already a very long video, but you reverse the phase, you find the part where it sounds bad, and you flip the phase back again, and you can do that left and right, and don't pay attention to the numbers so much. So it will sound full, it will sound good, but if you switch over to dance music and you expect that slamming sound, you're getting too much phase cancellation in the subwoofer frequencies. So it's a trade-off. So you can simulate mono by setting it the same. There's some presets in the head unit which I go over briefly. Usually a steeper crossover is better. That you can even go, I forget if it's 48 hertz or 36 hertz or 36 decibels an octave. It's very steep. 36 decibels in an octave is very steep. The 6 decibels is perceived doubling of loudness, so 36 decibels is like really like everything's exponential. So it's like a very hard cutoff. So if you have a particular frequency of a kick drum that you want to hear every time, and you can find that frequency, you can set your crossover there. Anyway, I went back and forth and fiddled around a lot. Again, here, this is a long distance, is a short delay, so that with centimeters, this will go up to 400 centimeters in the measurement. I put it forward, and it really can feel as though the bass is coming from your hood, and it's quite an experience. And then as you shorten the delay, the thump can come here, and you can, if you're patient and you're with the same particular piece of music or album, because they're usually mastered the same way, and you really want to feel the kick drum in your chest, you can play with a time alignment until the subwoofer seems to hit you in the chest, because the rest of your brain is hearing the rest of the kick signal, and the timing of the low frequencies compared to where the rest of it is can give you the illusion of having the bass drum in your chest. It's quite something when you pull it off. And then you'll switch to a different piece of music and it'll sound like crap. But when you pull it off in this way, it sounds really amazing. So this is one way that I do it.
Okay, next we want to talk about adjusting the subwoofer. And there's like a secret menu. Okay, so if I'm in network and I'm in the mid-range and I go back out to network, there's only 3 networks, 1, 2, 3, and then I'm on to position. However, if I go in network and I go down to low pass filter, which is the subwoofer, and I select that, now, whoops, go back. Now I can go network 1, 2, 3, 4. It's like Mario Brothers, a whole new level just for the subwoofer. So I'm gonna punch in, and I am an oddball where I have mine in stereo, or it will do it mono for you here, mono or stereo. And I think that's the only control. So that's where you can set it. That's like a secret menu item to set it in the controls. So I do stereo, and you can always set it to mono by hand by adjusting things. When I have two independent sub boxes, and I listen to more like real music than bass music. So what I do is similar to aligning the tweeters. I align the subwoofer the same way. So I go in and I go back to the menu, and I mute one side, I put it all over, I flip the phase on one of them, and I adjust the subwoofer until I hear cancellation, and then do the same thing on the other side. And that way I'm having the subwoofer, I'm crossing over my subwoofers really high. And I did that more from technical problems because of my installation was really bad. It started out not being so bad, but this is my first fiberglass job, and it fell apart. So those steel boxes, it's a mess. But anyway, I couldn't have the mid-range go as low as I can because it would rattle. So I had to put the crossover up from the mid-range and crossover up from the bass, so I ran it in stereo. So that's one way to do it, and then you wind up with different values in your time alignment. So let me see here. I think mine are the same right now. So high right, whoops, high left, or mid left, mid right, low left, low right. Okay, they are different, the way I have it. So 5 centimeters difference. So that's a difference from my head. And, like I said, I don't really necessarily recommend it, but it works for me. And when we get into the next section of adjusting the crossovers, you'll see what you can do with this. Another thing you want to do with the subwoofer is experiment with long delay times. So the delay time here, 140 centimeters, I can go up to, I forget how high it goes, I think 250 centimeters. Yeah, so as you push the distance further away, the delay gets shorter and shorter. So what happens, at some point, it will sound like the subwoofers, instead of being behind you, seem to come from the front. So it's a good effect when you can get it to work. And I've messed around with it sometimes, so that's something to try when you have this, is if you put the delay like really high, the subwoofers will appear to be in front of you because they'll actually come, setting this high causes this to come first. So the subwoofer sound will come first. This is just a very few milliseconds. It will come first, and then your other stuff will come later, and that will give the illusion that your subwoofer's in front of you. So that's a good effect when you can pull it off. Don't buy one of these. I have this. Just don't do it. It makes a mess. It's still plugged in, but don't do it. And also, when you're setting your subwoofer, and put this back down, you want to have the level. I have it at 140. Yeah. You want to have the level. You want to go back to network 1, and the level. Network 1 sets us up. Network 2 is, so I'm adjusting the crossover. So if my mid-range worked correctly, my crossover should probably be 80 hertz. But it's because of the problems I mentioned, I have it up much higher, and you can see there's a lot of overlap. You want to set your level in your subwoofer. Find some music that I use, like funk or fusion jazz or something with a real drum set and real kick drum, and you want to turn it up so that you can hear where the subwoofer comes from, and then turn it slowly down until the subwoofer goes away and you can't tell where it comes from, and that's where you want your balance to be. And then if you want more bass sound, you can do it with the equalizer, but that's where you want to set your subwoofer level.
Yeah, so to re-emphasize with the subwoofer level, it's very tempting because you just spent more money on your subwoofer than any other part of your system most of the time, because it's the biggest thing and you need a lot of power and so on. So you really want to hear it, and it's fine sometimes to do it, but to get a high quality sound, you want to turn it up so that you can hear it, you can hear it behind you, you can hear stuff rattling honestly behind you, and you just are very aware that your subwoofer is coming from behind you. And then you turn it down, down, down until you can't hear that the subwoofer's there. And that is the correct level. And especially if you just shelled out whatever, $2,000 for your subwoofer, you're not that happy about it. But then you can, once your level is matched with everything else, you use your equalizer to turn it up and down. So setting crossovers, we're turning the corner to the end. So the crossovers, and a lot of car stereos will have a crossover with, I'll use the word electronics, capacitors and coils and stuff to set the frequency, but it's fixed. This is an electronic crossover, and it's set differently. And you can see this diagram. Oops. This diagram here looks a lot like the picture that's on the head unit, which is kind of nice. So we have a low frequency all the way over, and it has a low pass filter. So everything below the filter, reverse camera. Anyway, the low pass filter, all the frequencies below where the filter cutoffs pass. So that's your subwoofer. Your mid is called a bandpass, which means there's a low pass portion, or a low pass portion of it on the left. Or sorry, this is a high pass. So your things here and the higher frequencies above it pass, and then at the other end of it is the low pass filter, and you can adjust these to create your middle frequency. And then for the high frequency, you have another, wrong hand. You have another low pass filter, high pass filter, high pass on your high, and you're setting everything below this goes, all the frequencies below go away, and everything above that frequency comes out. So you can adjust your frequency and your slope. Check the manual and learn about it. A good starting point is about 2500 hertz for your tweeter, 80 hertz for your sub. Be sure to check your speaker. If you can find the paperwork on your speaker, they have recommended crossover points for the speaker, especially with the tweeter. If you have a crossover point too high on the mid, it's just not maybe going to sound that great, or there's a lot of natural roll off on the speaker, you're just never going to hear it. 80 hertz is a good place for your sub. For the longest time, to be honest with you, until I put my passive radiators in, I don't even think my sub box could even hit 80 hertz. So 80 hertz for reference is like the open E on an electric guitar is about 80 hertz. Open E on electric bass is 40 hertz. So to go an octave below an E on an electric bass, you're really getting into like kick drum or electronic sounds. Electronic sounds can go down to as low as you want, 10 hertz, 20 hertz. So if you listen to a lot of that, you're going to spend a lot more energy worried about your subwoofer, and you probably might not be interested in something like this. But anyway, so that's introduction to crossovers, I guess. Once you have everything else set up, I kind of use them because I use the equalizer for problem solving. And so then in the screen we've seen a few times, bass level, mid level, and treble level. I consider it to be like bass, middle, and treble adjustments. So if I'm listening to something and the treble sounds too harsh, I just go to that menu and turn it down a couple of decibels, or adjust the bass that way. So I use it like bass, middle, treble controls. So here's into crossover adjustment. And why you'd want to adjust the crossovers is to you don't want to have sound overlapping. In a perfect world, a perfect crossover, each would have very sharp crossover curves, very sharp curves, and it would be completely segregated. So all of your mids would be in your mid-range speaker, all of your highs would be in your high, and that's kind of a good place to start. And then at the point that they cross over, weird things happen. So at 12 dB crossover, this point in the middle is actually gets boosted by quite a bit, by 3 decibels in a laboratory basically. But another thing that happens with the crossover in the car environment is that as you cross things over, you're getting phase distortion, you're getting phase interference. But what that does is it changes your perception of where the music's coming from. Like that's this whole head transfer and phase stuff. So it's part of what can set up your soundstage to make your soundstage appear for you to perceive your soundstage higher on your windshield, so that when everything is working smoothly in my car, even though you can see that the tweeters are physically on the floor and the mid ranges are physically low and the subwoofers in the trunk, perceptually my music is coming at me from the windshield, and the bass is coming right from the middle of the dashboard on like full range music, like live music, live, rock or country size music. So anyway, crossover adjustment.
Okay, next is setting the crossover. So this is the level, and then here we could set the crossover, network 2, and we turn this knob. So you can see the graphic is moving. So as I turn it down, the graphic is moving and you can see it overlap. So you probably want to start about 80 hertz. And that way you can have your bass drum independent. You can have your sub much louder, honestly. The hertz, so I have it, mine is an octave higher for problems I mentioned already. But another effect you get when you overlap the crossovers like this is you get phase distortion. But what the phase distortion can do is it can perceptually lift your sound floor up. So when you're adjusting your crossover frequency you are adjusting the bottom, and then to adjust the midpoint, I go up here, I go to my network 1, I'm going to go turn to my mid high pass filter, push this. Now, whoops, sorry, that's mute. I'm going to go back up a level. I'm going to turn over to network 2, and 40 hertz is very low. So I'm doing something like non-standard, but it works for me. So if you're having rattling, which I sometimes have if I listen to it too loud, you want to turn your mid-range up until your rattle goes away. And also my the passive radiators I have help with the frequencies. And throughout this whole process, it's very useful. There are plenty of inexpensive and free ones, tone generator, so you can get used to what 50 hertz really sounds like. But anyway, one thing that you'll find with the crossovers is you move the crossover point, so your time alignment is set. The crossover point will perceptually lift your sound, lift and lower your sound, because it's being distorted. So, but when you have your crossover point of your high, if you've got these so that they're arriving at your ear at the same time, then where the crossover point is, when you carefully adjust your crossover point, you can perceptually have your sound stage up high. So you're driving along and it sounds as though whatever you're listening to is at your windshield. And that's really great. And a lot of times you're kind of tricking yourself into thinking that, because the next day it might not sound that way. But when you have it nailed that way, it's a lot of fun to say, oh, my sound's up here. And if you cast your subwoofer forward and you like live music, you like whatever, I really like Peter Tosh is great for this, and then it really sounds like you're at a concert. So when you get it right, it's great, and when you get it wrong, it kind of makes a mess. So with the crossover, you generally want the crossover to be as steep as possible so that they're completely independent from each other. But when you're experimenting like this, you want to have the slope. So you can see a picture of the slope. So network 3 is where you go for the slope. So phase reverse, I want to put that back to normal phase. And so I'm a high pass at this point. So my slope, I can make it shallower or steep. You generally want it to be steep, but you can experiment with a shallower slope and you will send your perceptual height up. I've seen some people mount tweeters like up here, mount tweeters up here. I've found that even with my tweeter mounted way down there, it can sound like it's coming from up here because you trick your brain.
Okay, next is EQ, and the EQ should be last. And what you want to do with EQ is remove the problems. And you want to generally cut frequencies first, so that in your car there's going to be some frequencies that are very boomy and some frequencies that are not. I find that a tone generator is very useful because before I started doing this, I really didn't know what 300 hertz sounded like. I still am kind of but I didn't really know what tone is 1000 hertz or 2000 hertz, or you can hear a tone like the beep, like the beep for it's not really done that much anymore, but the censorship beep, that's a 1 kilohertz tone. But just in isolation, 1 kilohertz tone, you kind of, okay, it's roughly where it is. And 2 kilohertz tone is an octave higher than that. But anyway, if you use bandpass noise or other noise, you can kind of get a sensation for where it is. And if you listen carefully and practice with your EQ, and sometimes take a frequency band all the way out, and say, oh, okay, well, that's where electric guitar kind of fuzz tone is, and then you can bring it up and down once you learn where it is. But you want to cut problems first. So to solve EQ problems, when you're sitting in the driver's seat and you have this stuff going on, so your body's absorbing a lot of frequency, it's going to be muddy. In my setup, the way I did it, I have with the way I sit and everything, I can, if you have a line of sight from your tweeter to your ear, where your ear would be, that's probably pretty preferable. But anyway, you're going to have a different, because of the car's not symmetrical, you're going to have different EQ settings in left and right. So this head unit has the ability to completely separate EQ for left and right. So we'll go over, I'm going to go over how to do that. And so you want to use a mono source again, back to your same mono source. You're going to try to get to the center point again, and you can use a sweep tone from the apps and just listen to the sweep tone and see what happens. You're going to put it in, and you close your eyes, and you hear this tone go up, up, but until you fix your EQ, you're going to hear it go like this, and like this, and then you can look at the tone and say, oh wow, when it goes to 1200 hertz, it goes whoop. So I'm going to find the 1200 hertz value and tweak it down and move it so that I don't get that wiggle sound anymore. So what I found was I would go back and forth over and over again with my mono, my trusty Beatles recording, and then the sweep tone, and I'd try to see where the sweep tone would wiggle around as it was going up and down, and then gradually bring everything to the center. And this is how it's done. And then after you've gotten all that and you figure you corrected most of your problems, then you can put it to be both EQs at once, left and right, and season to taste. So if you like I have a boost at, you'll see, but I have a boost around 80 hertz, the kick drum frequency more or less should be pretty close to flat. If you're making big adjustments for your taste, your system's probably not working the way it should be. Modern music, any music has been mastered. It's been through very expensive studios to make it sound the way where the artist wanted it to sound. If you have a decent pair of headphones, you could try to say, well, if it sounds like this in my headphones, it probably should sound similar in my car. So that's a good test. And here's a way to set up the EQ.
And lastly is the EQ. So there's some automatic EQ. I would advise, let me see, what is this? Auto EQ, graphic equalizer. So graphic equalizer is what we want. Loudness, you don't want to have this on when you're doing it this way, because loudness, what it does is it shows you a picture. It just boosts the bass and treble. Off, on. So because we're whatever, audio files or audio enthusiasts, so this loops back around, back to time alignment. So loudness, don't do that. So graphic equalizer 1 and 2. So now is problem solving with equalizer. So you can once you've balanced your subwoofer, if you like that kick drum sound, you turn it up here. So I have my kick drum turned up, and then I had some gunk around this frequency that I dropped on both. Another thing you can do with the mono source here, and I've done, I play with this a lot of different ways. You hold this, click and hold, and then now I'm only doing the left side and the right side. And I hold again, and now I'm on the right side. I hold a third time, and now I'm doing both at the same time. So this is convenient if you have a test tone and you can play at a certain tone. The first thing you should use your equalizer for is problem solving. So when you're back to your mono music and you're trying to get it here, but it's like, oh, you know what? The cymbal really sounds like it's too high. It's cymbal too far over there. So instead of boosting the cymbal over here, you start cutting around 6 kilohertz, 5 kilohertz on this side, and do minus and see if that moves the perception here. And if you take some time with the equalizer, and again, just focus on one side at a time. You want to cut. So you want to get. So when you're cutting, you're bringing sound. If you're working on the right side, so I'll go here to the right side. So hold, left, hold, right, and I have my mono, and I have everything here, except it's kind of smeary at this point. Now I want to take the frequencies that I feel are smearing and subtract from the right side. Subtract. And try to get them here. Usually 1 or 2 decibels will move it, and if it's not, you probably are trying the wrong frequency. And then the same thing from the left. If I'm still getting smear over here, I want to subtract from the left side. So that's problem solving, and so that's why you might wind up with different values in the left and right. Then after the problem solving, the last thing you want to do with EQ is adjust for your personal taste. So my personal taste, I have that little kind of bass bump there. I have a little tiny treble hump and a tiny little zip up there. Mostly I use the so the graphic equalizer is for fixing things. It's not really for adjusting your bass and treble control. For the equivalent of a bass and treble control, I'm back in audio. Click that. I want to go into my network, and so this is not very super smooth way to adjust your bass and treble controls, but you go into network 1. If I want to turn up my treble control, I go to highlight my high pass filter for high. I go back up a level to the main network, turn it to network 2. And then I can turn my highs up, -1 dB, 0, -1, -2, and I can adjust my low, mids, and highs this way. So once your equalizer is set to your personal preference, you can do little tweaks with your levels to use your bass and treble. So that's the EQ, and that's the way I set up my system. All right, everybody, this is a little chubby for the few people that make it this far. So that's it. Hopefully you got something out of this. It took me years of trial and error to get this far. Learning the menus is there's a lot going on, but it's really intelligently laid out, and you can, after you spend some time with it, you can really kind of navigate just by listening to the chirps of the thing and realizing what page you're on, and you can do it, without really looking at it. And when you do this,
full setup by ear. This give you to do what I described here. For the first time, you count on it taking you like a whole weekend. And so this is, I enjoy the hobby, but your spouse or children might not enjoy that you're spending the whole weekend doing this. But hey, I did. It was fun. So that's it. So I do a lot of different projects. Oh, I should have closed my laundry, but whatever. My creative outlet brand is Taurus Head Studios. I do a lot of videos on guitar and some videos on computer coding. And this one, I just felt I'm getting ready to get rid of that car finally with 190,000 miles on it. But there was not very much material for how to use this particular head unit. It's very unusual head unit. I've gotten a lot of pleasure out of it, and it can really make it's a lot of fun to mess around with, and you can really have your moments where you can really get a sublime sound experience. I recommend it. If you think you would like this head unit, you probably will. And nowadays you can probably get it pretty cheap. So take care. Have a great day.